Welcome to the New Planner Podcast, where it's all about helping you successfully enter the financial planning profession and accelerate your financial planning career. This podcast will help you understand the profession, become familiar with the various career paths available to you, and avoid the mistakes that limit your success. Join your host, Caleb Brown, to explore the human side of creating a successful planning career through interviews, personal experience, and insights from the trenches. Let's get started.
Welcome to the 195th episode of the New Planner Podcast. This is Caleb Brown, your host. My guest today is Cody Garrett, who is the founder of Measure Twice Financial and Measure Twice Planners. Cody joins the show today to share his journey into the financial planning profession, starting with how financial planning wasn't on his radar as he was a professionally trained musician. And while this was a rewarding vocation for him, he was requiring lots of hours away from his family. Plus, he realized he was a self-employed business owner who needed financial guidance himself. So he began consuming any personal finance resources and ultimately made the career change and joined a local fee-only RIA. Check out the middle two where he talks about how he got hired at the RIA, what he did there, and why he left and started his own financial planning and financial planner education firm, how he secured clients, developed his process, and started earning more money and spending more time with his family. Plus, why the advice-only model works for him and why he thinks it's a great niche for new planners to focus on, and how he is setting out to change the public's perception of what a financial planner is and does. I hope you enjoy my interview with Cody Garrett. Hey, Cody, welcome to the New Planner Podcast.
Hey, Caleb, thanks so much for inviting me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for making time for us. So there's a story here, right? And we're gonna get to the bottom of this. This is going to be interesting because professional musician, right? So maybe just start there. You're a music guy, and then somehow you transitioned into financial planning. Can you just go all the way back and just walk us through how that happened?
Yeah, it's a interesting story going from music to money. A lot of people think that I transitioned from music to money because I wanted to make more money, but it was actually not the case. So going back, I won't go back too far, in terms of where I was born and all that, but I was a professional musician starting after college. I went to two colleges for music, University of Houston I almost said financial planning. I went to the University of Houston for music theory, which is kind of like the science of music. You can kind of see that I already have kind of this left brain, right brain, create, the art and science kind of combining here. And I also went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, which is more focused on the contemporary side. So again, a lot more science and a lot more art, mostly on contemporary, whereas at University of Houston was more on the classical side. So you can see there's already kind of bridges that we've been building here, right? I've worked in like the traditional, the classical music, and I also work in like the modern, the contemporary music. Same thing's happening in financial planning now. But I had a professional music career for 10 years. That was from about 2010, I had a professional music career from about 2008 to 2018. I got married in 2015, so I really had to start adulting a little bit more. I didn't realize until that point that—
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
You're right. You suddenly like, oh, I have more responsibility now. So when I, back in 2015, when I got married, it was the first time I realized, wait a minute, as a professional musician, I'm actually a self-employed business owner. I used to kind of think of myself as, quote unquote, just a musician, but I realized that as a musician, at least to do well enough financially to, sustain yourself and also, of course, save and invest on top of what you're spending and giving, I really had to think more intentionally about my roles in music. So I was, to be a professional musician, on average, you have to be doing, performing, maybe arranging or recording in the studio. Maybe you're a conductor, maybe you're a teacher, right? So there's all these different hats that you wear as a professional musician that all stack up to a successful music career. There are very few musicians that I know who just have one gig that they do. That's why they call them gigs, right? Like kind of like the gigs keep stacking up, right? To terabytes, right? Gigabytes to terabytes. But as a professional musician, I really wanted to become more intentional with my personal finances. As not as a financial planner, but as a professional musician. So I actually started listening to these personal finance podcasts back then. So Choose FI, the Money Guy Show, some of these radical personal finance. So I had a full-time position at a church as a music director, and it was about an hour away from my house. So I drive 2 hours a day. So what I would do is I would listen to about 4 hours a day of podcasts at 2 times speed. So I was listening to about 4 hours of personal finance podcast every day. Even during my breaks at work, I'd like kind of, slide into the, the side room and listen to a little bit more if I could. I fell in love with personal finance, especially, the personal side of finance, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But I just got really enthralled with this idea that it's not just earning money and saving money. There are so many facets of personal finance that go beyond investing, for example. So that's again, we'll talk more about that. But one thing that happened back in about 2017, 2018 is I was working full time as a music director, working about 40 hours a week. Plus, I was playing gigs in the evenings, right? On the weekends, I was doing wedding gigs. But there was actually 1 month specifically, I worked 40 hours a week at my full time job and played 31 Broadway shows all in 1 month. So I was practically working from 8 to 5, 5 to 8, and 8 to 12 every day for a whole month. And what I realized is, wait a minute, I don't want to live a life where I don't get to eat dinner with my wife every day. For some reason, being able to eat dinner with my wife every day was like that. Like that's what needed to happen for me to call my career successful. Is how can I make enough money, of course, to sustain our living expenses, but also provide me the time and energy required to be able to spend time with my family. So I actually switched careers from music to money, not to make more money, but to have more space in my time. So back in 2018, I was actually talking to my mom on the phone one day. She's checking up on me as moms do. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're in college, your mom will keep calling you after college, like even when you're independent after college. She's well, once a mom, always a mom. But so she called me one day and said, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And I told her, "Hey, I'm working real hard in music, but I've become so interested in personal finance." And she said, "Hey, like, do you know your godfather?" Which is kind of funny. Your godfather, Joe. He works in the financial space. Like, you should just give him a call and tell him what you're up to. Maybe he has some resources that he could share with you just to go deeper on personal finance. And I was like, cool. So I called Joe, and he was so excited that I was excited about personal finance. He invited me to lunch. So we sat down at this Chinese restaurant, and he told me what a certified financial planner was. And he told me effectively that, hey, like, you could work as a financial advisor. And by financial advisor, financial planner, you can really help people really make well-informed decisions and manage their money successfully. I was like, that sounds super cool. Like, to help people with the things that I already like doing, for myself. I really do believe that when you teach, you learn twice, or when the best way to learn is to teach others. So I was like, wait a minute, I could have a career just educating people on the things that I'm already passionate about, and actually maybe, have a good career even financially. And he's like, absolutely. But he said, the first step is to start drinking out of the fire hose and enroll in a CFP education program. So my first step as a professional musician, I enrolled in the CFP education program at Rice University down here in Houston. It was an in-person class, which I really loved because you could be more interactive. And I took and passed the CFP exam on the first try. And then I got my Series 65. And Joe actually let me kind of, not just be a fly on the wall, but actually sit in real client meetings. He hired me kind of as a, base salary, as that kind of what do they call it? The client, client service representative, right? The CSR, right? So I really learned from the ground up. I mean, like, I didn't know what an IRA was. Like, even now we're talking 5 years ago, I didn't know what an IRA was, right? And now I'm at this place and gratefully able to kind of pass the torch and mentor and educate others on their path. So just within 2 to 3 years, I went from music to money. I ended up launching my own firm, an advice-only financial planning firm called Measure Twice Financial, which is very different from the traditional route where I started, which now I actually help people manage their own money successfully rather than managing investments for clients. So I'm really helping the DIY investor become more intentional and thoughtful with managing their own money successfully. And I love my career. And now I have 3 businesses, but that's enough for now. But I welcome any questions you have about this.
Thanks for sharing all that. A lot to unpack there. So really, the lifestyle choice makes sense, right? I mean, this is one of the things I tell candidates there. I mean, you can make a lot of money if you want to, and that's certainly why some people choose this. But the lifestyle, just the satisfaction you get from helping these people, and you can touch a lot of people and have an impact, and there's just a lot of good things going for it. Okay, so let's go back to, I think you said it was your godfather, but so you joined his. I want to talk a little bit more about you getting hired. It looks like you had kind of a family connection,
Yeah,
quasi-family connection at a traditional sort of RIA money management situation. and you were like an entry level person there. And how long did you work there? And did you stay in that CSR role?
Yeah, so I started working there back in the fall of 2018, kind of, shortly after I started the CFP curriculum at Rice University. So I started as a kind of client service representative was only really the only term they could give somebody who like had no idea anything about anything. But I was sitting in that chair, and so one thing I didn't notice until later was how lucky I was for my first role in the industry as a career changer to start in actually a fee-only RIA. My first role in finance, I didn't have to sell any products. Not only did I not sell any products, but like I wasn't even put in like a role where I could do that, right? Or I didn't. I actually, it's funny. I actually got my life and health license, right? But just to learn more about insurance, not to actually sell products. So when I first went there, it was actually an RIA broker dealer. But shortly after, they cut away the BD side. So effectively, I started as a fee only RIA that was actually passionate about financial planning, which I realize now is very rare to begin with to get your first job at a firm like that. And also very kind of lucky in a way that I had a mentor who already knew who I was. Again, he didn't like I didn't have any skills necessarily that looked good on paper, but at least he could. I mean, again, referrals are a big part of our industry. So to get it, to be referred as a family friend to say, hey, Cody, right? Like, you've known Cody since he was in diapers. Like, he's a good guy. You can trust him. So I think all I had at that point was kind of trust and the passion behind it. I would say that Joe's not here on the podcast today, but I would say I think the reason Joe was willing to, again, pay me $40,000 to start with no knowledge, no experience in financial planning is that he could tell how passionate I was. Like I was jumping out of my chair, so excited to learn, so excited to teach. And sometimes I think to myself, like, why isn't everybody like this? But I think that's a special thing. If you're new to the industry, whether you're aspiring or a new financial planner, if you are passionate about what you're doing, please show that passion, right? So like don't feel like you have to kind of be very serious and don't let the suit and tie at the interview cover up your passion for the industry. Because I do believe if you want to work at a firm that really values financial planning, they want to see that drive and intention and passion in you. They don't want to feel like they're going to have to spend all their time and effort trying to get you motivated. They want somebody who's already motivated. And another thing too is it was really nice. That firm already knew that I was getting my CFP. Like I was already on the path to educating myself. And I paid for my own CFP education. I paid for my own exams, right? Just taking the initiative and them seeing that, I think helped make them a little bit more comfortable at hiring me as a career changer with no experience.
How did you add value when you started and used your words that you didn't know anything?
So I think the value I added kind of ironically was when clients came into financial planning meetings, I thought that the only way I could be valuable is by giving financial advice, right? Is by knowing a lot about all these advanced strategies that I know now. But what I realized is Joe actually valued that I had experience from different industry. So even though I was a professional musician in my background, I was also, as a professional musician, I was a music director. So I hired people, like I was a manager of others, right? I was self-employed. So when we were working with a client who was self-employed, like I actually had that experience. So even though I didn't have I didn't know the rules and concepts yet, financial planning wise, that didn't mean like that my soft skills and my experience for being a professional musician, like that actually provided more value to the client meetings than I initially thought, and probably even Joe initially thought. So I think my value in the first year as I was educating in the CFP program, I think the value was just being, genuinely curious about the people in the room. I really do believe that the best way to show someone you care about them is to actually care about them. So I wasn't just in the room to take technical notes. Like I actually became interested in the people that we were, talking with, whether it's prospective clients, current clients, or even those legacy clients who had been there, multi-generational at that firm. So yeah, really going in, being genuinely curious and sharing experience outside of the technical knowledge, actually, I think provided a lot of value to the firm. And even a lot of prospective clients actually said that one of the reasons that they ended up joining the firm is because they really liked that they had a multi-generational gap. That Joe at that point was probably in his mid 50s and I was around 30. So they actually liked seeing that there was maybe a future generation that could serve maybe their kids or their grandkids in the future.
You said something earlier about just the passion and enthusiasm. And I've just seen so many times in the recruiting firm where we've put forth a candidate who is a good candidate, looked great on paper, did well, but for some reason in the interview, they didn't show that. They didn't show that they were passionate, and the clients are like, yeah, we like that, but we just didn't feel it. And like, oh man, I mean, so I really appreciate you emphasizing that, because that's something that I'm telling candidates and job seekers all the time. Even if you have a terrible GPA and bad resume like me when I got started, enough people saw the passion and they're like, man, we have to take a chance on this person. I mean, and it ended up working out, as I've shared previously. So just absolutely keep going with that. I wanted to drive that point home. So you stayed for what, like couple 3 years or something?
Yeah, two
like
and a
that?
half years. So
Okay.
I stayed long enough to get my CFP marks, and then I actually started creating educational content, which was actually what pulled me into my own career.
Was it an amicable situation? Did they know you were going to leave?
Yeah, so rather than giving a 2 week notice, I gave a 3 month notice. So I knew that me leaving suddenly would, I didn't want to, again, because I actually truly cared about the firm, I cared about the advisors and the clients, that I wanted to make it amicable and just try to smooth out that friction as much as possible to make sure that everybody felt like they were taken care of. And everybody wins by me leaving the firm.
Okay. And then so you said, okay, look, I'm going to go start my own firm, because why? Why didn't you just stay there?
So I ended up, while I was at that firm, Joe, I mean, again, so lucky, first of all, that I could start at this fee only RIA. Also very fortunate that he allowed me to create educational content on social media, which is a lot more rare in the broker dealer world, but it's actually becoming more common in the RIA world. Is assuming, of course, you archive all these things for compliance. But he actually allowed me, again, since I believe that the best way to learn is to teach. Every time I learned something, whether technical or qualitative, as a financial planner, I actually documented my process. And I want to share, like in your book, Finding Your Path, that I read before I met you, I love, you mentioned this idea that, first of all, fee only RIAs, on average, they lack training programs, right? Leading to improper training. And also this amazing idea that you mentioned of, you said, create a curriculum from your internship to serve the future interns. And before reading your book, I mean, by the way, if you haven't read this, you're listening to this, Caleb isn't paying me or anything for this endorsement, but yeah, Finding Your Path is probably the first book, right? Like along with, Daniel Yerger's book, Getting in the Door, and then Caleb's book, Finding Your Path. Like I would not start in this profession without reading those two books, back to back, and within like probably just at 2 times speed, right? Super fast on audiobook. But but I wanted to say that what's exciting about this is, even though I went to a firm that was really passionate about me and mentoring me, they didn't have a well-documented planning process. It was just really learned by observing and watching. So I effectively, kind of unintentionally back then, I actually started documenting what I was learning, and I effectively created a comprehensive financial planning process that was fully documented. I had a template and a process for every part of the plan, covering 30 plus planning areas as I learned them along the way. But I also, during that time, I actually created educational blogs. When I got passionate about a concept such as the Roth IRA distribution rules, I was like, that's so cool. And I would write an article about that. Again, it's cool to me. So I'd write an article about that. After about 6 months of creating educational content online and just, adding value within financial planning, within personal finance Facebook groups, I was receiving 5 prospective client inquiries per week. And specifically, this is the reason that I left the firm rather than staying there. There was actually a single phone call that changed my trajectory. This one prospective client called and he says, I have interviewed over 10 fee-only certified financial planners, and none of them will give me financial advice without managing my money. He says, I feel comfortable clicking the buttons, making my trades. I have the time, temperament, and talent to click buttons at Fidelity or Vanguard or Schwab. I want to pay you for the advice on everything else, including the investments, but Social Security and RMDs and all these other, topics that have nothing to do with like which investments to choose. So I started receiving enough of those inquiries. So I was like, wait a minute, if 5 prospective clients want this per week, I'm pretty sure that I could build a firm, in the future, and not only build a firm in the future, but eliminate 2 hours of driving a day. Right. Not just eat dinner with my wife, but eat lunch with her as well. Right. So I really like doubled down on the lifestyle. And I actually ended up moving from about making, 50 to 55,000 a year to making, over 150 within a year of, switching to launch my own firm. So again, by the way, it's not that easy. Like it's not just like you launch a firm and you do well. The educational content and the social media engagement is really what drove me to being successful as a solo RIA.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you one shared the numbers, but also like it's not just that easy. A lot happened and regularly creating content. I mean, you said you're at it for at least 6 months, right? I
Right,
had a
right.
couple, I have a lot of times it's career changers. They'll contact me like, yeah, I tried to start my own firm and I held 2 or 3 client events and I sent out a couple newsletters. I didn't really get any clients. It's like, well, how long did you do it? Well, I, spent a couple months on it. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be more like a couple years.
Mm,
I mean, it takes a while to get built up. So I'm glad that you added that. All right. So you moved over. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that back to the advice only thing. I mean, there's not a lot of people offering that. I mean,
right.
to that prospect's point. I mean, so now you're still, I mean, I would say it's certainly in the minority, very few people offering that. Just maybe walk us through those early days. It obviously has worked out for you, but what were some of the biggest challenges there?
Ironically, one of the biggest challenges, kind of as you mentioned, is that the supply for advice only is not meeting the current demand. Within a year of my firm launching, I was actually referring away 20 prospective clients per week who wanted to hire me. They wanted to pay me $6,400 for a 3-month, 3-meeting process. And I was only serving 2 a month, right? In terms of what I limited my capacity on purpose so that I could build other businesses as well, on the education side. But one of the biggest challenges is that I was like it was like a brand new restaurant, but there were people wrapped around the building and there wasn't enough food in the kitchen. And one of the biggest challenges here was, hey, do I stay solo? Do I become a boutique firm, maybe with a few employees, and maybe another advisor or so? Or do I try to scale and become an enterprise firm? And I specifically chose to stay solo as a financial planner so that I could build an enterprise education platform. So again, I think this goes back to really intentionally, you have to understand who do you want to serve? How do you want to serve them? And only then do you define, how you're compensated and what type of business model you're going to create. So I asked myself, hey, yes, I might be able to take on, let's say, 20 clients a week with a massive team, with a lot of overhead, with a lot of, managerial meetings, or I could just limit how many people I serve one-on-one and help equip 1,000 other financial planners unrelated from my firm who are looking for clients. Maybe I can actually provide educational content to help them serve those clients, even better than I could. So I had this kind of abundance mindset, both for advisors, like saying, hey, like I don't need to be the only advisor serving these people, right? There's limited time, energy for Cody, but there are thousands of other financial planners who are passionate, but don't have that same, incoming flow that I did. But I'm also having an abundance mindset of, I do believe that consumers, retail investors can be successful even before they hire a financial planner. So I really wanted to show the public what financial planning really looked like, right? That it's more than just choosing investments, but there's also a qualitative side of financial planning, that you're fitting your numbers into your life, not your life into your numbers. Maybe next we could kind of talk about, I guess, beyond the firm. I've kind of gone in 2 directions. I forked left to teaching advisors how to become, well-equipped financial planners, and also teaching consumers how to become, better financial planners for their own family.
Talk about the consumer side, and then we can go into the advisor side.
Yeah, so Measure Twice Money is the name of my consumer business. You'll notice I have actually separate business entities for each area. So this is separate from my RIA. It's called Measure Twice Money. So Measure Twice Money, I actually provide my entire financial planning process to consumers so they can create their own financial plan as a family. So I provide all of the video lessons, 5 hours of video showing step-by-step how to create a financial plan as a non-advisor, including all the templates, calculators, all the tools to do it themselves as a DIY investor, DIY financial plan. Kind of a fun thing I'm doing now in terms of trying to change the public perception of financial planning is all of my financial planning meetings are now on YouTube, available to watch to the public. So those clients are allowing their real names, real numbers, real conversations to be vulnerably shared on YouTube for anybody in the public to watch. Because one of the issues in our industry, and if you're a financial planner, you might have noticed this, is we talk a lot as as advisors about how valuable we are, how valuable our services are. But the problem is value is defined by the consumer, not by the provider, right? So it's up to the consumer to define how valuable something is. So rather than try to just talk about how valuable my process is, I show my work. It's similar to, let's say you were going to hire somebody to commission a piece of art for you. If you went to their website and they didn't have any of their artwork shown on the website, you'd be a little nervous about hiring this person. Like, do they actually, if they don't have a portfolio of art on their website, like, are they really a good artist? So I, again, not to gain more clients for myself, since I'm not accepting new relationships there. I wanted to show what real financial planning looked like so that consumers could watch that and say, wow, like one of two things. Wow, I didn't know that that's what financial advisors did. And second, wait a minute, my financial advisor isn't asking those types of questions. Like, I might be missing out on real financial planning because my financial advisor isn't actually providing that service. So I wanted to educate consumers on what's actually out there, not to grow my own firm, but to grow firms for other advisors with an abundance mindset.
I can't remember anybody ever before I saw some of your videos putting their client meetings on YouTube. Public. I mean, that's gotta be a leading edge sort of. Is there anybody else that was doing that? I mean, that's really cool. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, I'll say that. So Dr. Jay Zigmont is another financial planner who, he's had some financial planning clients, sign, similar to me, like sign a separate agreement, giving him permission to share publicly. Okay. I've just decided for myself that I'm going to continue serving clients I've served in the past, but all future clients, that'll be a requirement to be a financial planning client, is that they will give me full permission to share not only their videos, but also like their financial documents. Of course, I'll remove any confidential information about where they live or where their money is, but they've given me, irrevocable worldwide access to share all their information publicly for the sake of educating other consumers and advisors in the future.
And I do really like the point, because I get this all the time. People are like, oh, Caleb, you're a CFP. Like, yeah, what do we need to invest? Like, it's a lot more than investments. People are like, what? Like, I mean, they just don't get it. So
right.
I know I'm speaking for a lot of other people, but appreciate you, one, just coming up with the idea, putting yourself out there, the transparency, and really trying to help shape the perception, because it is geared towards the Wolf of Wall Street, the Wall Street movie, the investment piece. So, okay, so you're busy with the firm, you're busy with the blog, but then you also have this other company where it's training for other planners, other advisors. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, when I was at that first RIA where I started, I specifically documented my entire financial planning process, thinking that's just what you do, right? We have documentation for every other part in the firm. Why don't we have a written policy for how we do planning? And what I realized, like, once I launched my own firm, is that most financial planners, whether you're at a firm or launching your own firm, a lot of people didn't have a documented process, like, so that every new financial planning client went through like a very specific order of operations, from the first prospective client inquiry, that email that they send you, all the way through plan presentation, implementation, and monitoring. So I documented all that, and people are coming to me saying, hey, Cody, like, your firm seems to be successful. Can you show me, like, what do you do in the 3 months, 3 meetings with clients? And I actually had individual Zoom calls with over 100 people that first year of launching my business, 100 other financial planners asking me to show me kind of how I do it. I'm like, wait a minute, rather than having all these one-on-one meetings, maybe I just record, a 7-hour video course showing step-by-step how I do everything in my firm, in and on the business. And I create a video course. So I initially did that. I created a video course, 7-hour video course, includes, it's 7 hours of video content, 50 plus planning templates and calculators. Really just, it's almost like if you were to come work at my firm as a new financial planner, I effectively just created a training program, not to work at my firm, but either to, launch your own business or to bring that into your existing firm. So on top of the video content and all the customizable tools and templates, a lot of cool things have happened since we launched just 2 years ago. There's also over 30 other financial planners have shared their own video content on the platform. So we call these niche expert presentations, where, for example, you can learn about solo 401ks from Sean Mullaney, who literally wrote the book on solo 401k, right? So to be able to learn from other practicing financial planners, never be sold a product. Like, we have no vendor sales allowed in our educational content. It provides CE credit. We have over 30 hours of CE for CFP. The newest thing that's really exciting for us is that Measure Twice Planners provides 50 hours of CFP standard pathway experience per month. So for example, if somebody joins today, they can actually get 150 hours available today plus 50 hours of experience every month moving forward. So if you imagine somebody who's a freshman in their financial planning program, right, a university program, by the time they graduate as a member of Measure Twice Planners, they'll have over a third of their experience already completed before they even sit down as a financial planner serving clients.
And that's because you just keep loading in new client meetings. They watch the video, and then there's some sort of reporting requirement or something.
Right. And it's not one of those things where you just get the experience for being a member, but effectively we watch real client meetings. We review their real financial documents.
Yeah.
We develop financial plan deliverables, but we also do this in a live collaborative setting where you actually get feedback from, 50 other plus passionate financial planners who it's just so nice to be able to learn from other people in real time, not be sold any solutions or products along the way. It's really like, I call it like the chicken bouillon of experience where yes, you might be spending just a few hours gaining the experience. I always say there's a difference between, getting 5 years of experience and 30 years of 5-year experience. So what we're doing in Measure Twice Planners is we're really accelerating your path, not just in getting hours, but every 2 hours you spend learning real financial planning as a member, you're actually probably getting, multiples of that in actual experience versus how do you try to gain that, just working for yourself or in another firm.
Yeah, it's a great tool. And I know there's just as a member myself, just kind of poking around and going through some of the stuff. I really appreciate your approach, just kind of, and you're like, hey, look, this is how I do it. Not necessarily the best way. It doesn't have to be this way. And I mean, I like that. And just having a lot of the stuff on there, because to your point, the calls that we get at the recruiting firm, it's like, hey, we want to hire someone and we need them to take over 100 clients in like a couple weeks or 6 months or what. It's like, okay, you're like, well, you got to develop some people. Like, no, we need someone else to develop them. We need to steal them from another firm. And, maybe that works for some firms, but I mean, I think the route that you're going, trying to get these people, I mean, just think how marketable a new college grad would be. Say, yeah, I've already completed all the CFP work experience requirement.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right? I do want to mention real fast that, I'm not the only one providing experience like outside of firms. I do want to mention quickly, FPA residency is an awesome way to get, 500 hours. Again, not just the hours, even though you're trying to get these hours quickly and things, really the context and the content itself is very valuable. So FPA residency, Hannah Moore's externship, and Amplify Planning Core, that's similar to mine in terms of, we do things differently, but hers also provides the 500 hours for externship and 50 hours a month. So like if you combine what I'm doing, what Hannah Moore's doing with FPA, like you can literally graduate with all your hours. So you pass that exam, you could be a CFP on day one, graduation. Again, that's quite a journey, but still, one thing that's really powerful here is a lot of these firms they kind of have this requirement to say, hey, you need to have about 3 years of experience, or you need to have your CFP. Right? That eliminates so many people who are new to the industry or career changers. So again, I'm not the only one doing this, but I'm trying to just help lay the groundwork for new planners to feel, not just get that first job, but actually sit down in that chair as a new financial planner and actually feel like they know how to do their job in terms of practical application, not just the rules and concepts that they learned in the CFP program.
So much of it is just getting, I mean, if you're a sports person, just at bats. I mean, your music, like just the practice, just constantly practicing before you really get in there, the confidence, because it's so much about confidence. And we'll link to all of your stuff. And I'm glad you mentioned those other resources. We touched on those a little bit in the book as well. I want to go back to something as we're winding down here that you said earlier. I think the advice only, is the supply of planners moving there, catching up with the demand?
I would say that there are probably twice as many as they were a few years ago. Again, I'm just one of kind of the thought leaders. I'm not the thought leader, but I'm one of the thought leaders in advice only planning. Whereas my story, again, there were some successful advice only planners, but my story happened to get more public acceptance. For example, I was on the Kitsis Advisor Success podcast talking about my journey. Again, I was mentoring 100, 200 people one-on-one to try to help them launch their own firm. So there are more than there were when I started, that's for sure. But the supply still doesn't meet the demand for advice only. Just quickly, I'll define advice only here. So advice only is really comprehensive financial planning, including investment advice. So still giving investment advice, but without the obligation or even the option to manage client investments at the firm level. So if you're at a firm that provides financial planning, with or without investment management, we'd actually not call that advice only, just because there actually is an incentive there to drive them toward investment management. So my firm does not provide investment management to any clients, including no product sales on the insurance or investment side.
Really cool stuff. Final question. We didn't talk about this. Your instrument. Share that with the audience. What do you play?
I played piano since I was 5 or 6 years old. Piano, keyboards, really anything with black and white keys. And then I also did percussion in high school and middle school, high school, and college.
And then lastly, any final tips or any parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yes. I'll teach you something I learned as a professional musician. This was actually, so Ricky Minor, he was actually the bass player and music director for Whitney Houston back in the day. He was one of my mentors as a musician. And he told me this awesome quote, which is, nobody's going to call you if they don't have your number. So I think a lot of aspiring and new financial advisors, financial planners, you're kind of waiting for an opportunity to come your way. It's like you're sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, but your phone's not going to ring. You're not going to get that call if that person on the other line doesn't have your number. So what I mean by that, this is maybe a test for your audience, right? Anytime somebody, an aspiring planner comes to me and says, hey, I'm trying to get my first job in the industry. What do I do? And I go to their LinkedIn page and they only have, 1 or 2 mutual connections. I say, hey, go add 100 new mutual connections and then come back to me. And what I mean by that is it's not just about having connections, like in terms of quantitative, like how many people follow you or something, but it's just really showing that intention, again, that passion, right? If somebody comes to me asking for a job as a financial planner and I see that we have 250 mutual connections on LinkedIn in the financial planning space, I know that they've done their work to really research the industry and really know. Again, it's similar to somebody who tries to find a job as a chef and they've never even watched somebody cook on YouTube. They've never they don't even have their own set of knives ready, right, to cook.
Yep.
So I just you need to show not that you're passionate, but you've actually done the work to know. And just last little thing on that is if you're interviewing for a firm to go work there, try to know more about that firm than they know about themselves. So before I would go work at a firm, I would know how many employees there are. I would know what their services are, what's their service process, fee structure. I would know the demographic of who they want to serve, how they serve. Do they serve people who are in retirement, on the path to retirement, early in their careers? If you don't know who and how they serve, how are you going to prove to them that you're going to provide value to their firm in the future? Again, if you know who they serve before you show up to that interview, you're actually going to feel like you're already a part of the team because you can speak that language.
Love it. Cody, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Always glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the New Planner Podcast. If you're ready to discover the top career paths for financial planners and see which track is best for you, we created a free guide to help you. Grab your copy of the Financial Planner Career Roadmap at newplannerrecruiting.com/roadmap. There, you'll also find more tools and resources all created to help you build a successful financial planning career. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, we're here to help you succeed.